Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
The McKeechee stories flowing into the Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. One involving a foam hat. That foam cowboy hat that we can't get into. It is Friday. Thomas Drance standing by. All of our guests today, including Thomas, are sponsored by Passant Motors, BC's most trusted car dealership, located in the heart of Surrey, with great financing rates, guaranteed approvals, and open 7 days a week. Learn more at Passant Motors, BASANTmotors.com. Canucks losing to the Coyotes 3-2 last night in the desert. Here to talk about it, as always, on a Friday from The Athletic, Thomas Drance. Thanks for doing this, sir. Happy St. Patrick's Day. How are you?
Gentlemen, and a happy St. Patrick's Day to you both as well. Are you going to dye your crown green tonight, Rick?
No, I will not be doing that. How do you do that? Like,
you put dye in it.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
No, should it?
It's going in with some ice and some water, and that's it. Nothing else.
Some water.
I have to put a little bit in.
You cut it, do you?
But you put it with ice. The ice melts. That's your water.
Thomas, I know how to do it. I've been drinking Crown for 30 plus years, Thomas. I know how to drink it. Thank you.
No worries.
Coyotes beat the Canucks, if we can move on here, 3-2. So what was different in that game versus the 5 games before that the Canucks won?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Canucks probably decided to both cut it with water and put ice in their drink. Ooh, okay. And as a result, ended up with something that was, watered down and inferior. That would be my suggestion of what ailed the Canucks last night. They didn't play well. I don't know what to say. They went on the road. That's first of all, they went on the road, right? I mean, we've seen this team win a ton of games at home of late. They went on the road and they lost soundly. The Coyotes had 23 scoring chances in the first 2 periods. They were way better than Vancouver was last night. There was a big gulf in the quality and control of play, and Vancouver was on the back foot for much of the game, in my opinion. I thought the Canucks didn't get much from their top 6. The Pettersson line was fine. Obviously, they generated the goal, the opener, and it's Beauvillier and Pettersson and Garland combining for the second Canucks goal too. But Phil DiGiuseppe was the low man among Canucks forwards in ice time. I didn't think the Miller line with Besser so good on Tuesday, right? Their best game of the season came earlier this week. I thought this was probably their worst game as a trio since they've been put together. And, when Vancouver doesn't get a lot from their top 6, I don't know that there's an awful lot else there, right? I still liked the games that I saw from Burrows, Juleson, Dakota Joshua. Yeah. But, if I'm saying those 3 guys and Pettersson are your best players, you're not going to win a lot of nights. The Canucks just didn't have it. They just didn't play well.
Thomas, I know you tweeted about this as we focus on something positive for the Canucks. Anthony Beauvillier with a couple of assists. He has 16 points in 18 games with the Canucks. That versus a comparison versus Bo Horvat's underwhelming numbers with the Islanders so far.
Yeah, so the character assassination of Bo Horvat by some in this fan base since he left is a sight to behold. But here's what's happening, okay? Mm-hmm. The New York Islanders are hot, right? They're winning a ton of games. I haven't checked their point percentage since they beat Anaheim. It was 62% going into that game. So, 64-65% range, right? One of the top 10 teams in the league since the trade. In the time that Bo Horvat has spent on Long Island, he is leading all of their forwards in ice time, and not by a little bit. He's played 25, almost 30 more minutes than any other forward on the Islanders. Effectively what they're doing, and Horvat's starting an awful lot in the offensive end, but effectively what they're doing is they're playing the wheels off of Horvat, and that's creating easier circumstances for the rest of their team. He's holding down a true number 1 tough minutes role, and by the underlying data anyway, the results are sensational. Like we're talking 55% of scoring chances, some of the best underlying numbers among all Islanders players, really low on ice shooting percentage, really low personal shooting percentage, some really bad luck in the offensive end impacting his game, and the lowest save percentage on his team too. So there's some cluster luck that's causing the Islanders to be outscored, but not that widely. And they're winning the territorial battle while deploying Horvat in like no question toughs. We've seen this before, by the way. When Horvat gets thrown to the Wolves, he doesn't usually produce the same way, right? He can do it. He can hang in some of the hardest minutes in hockey, but he typically loses some production when that happens. And I do think that's part of what we're seeing. But the news of Bo Horvat's demise as a useful player has been wildly overplayed in the Vancouver market. Horvat's production's been down, but he's been helping a team play winning hockey. That's what you want. Like, that's what you want. He's played well. They've kept themselves afloat despite the Matt Barzal injury. Horvat's two-way contributions have been essential to that. Beauvillier's played really well. He's been a nice find. I mean, I don't think we should take it much further than that, in part because, everyone who's played with Pettersson has produced like this. Right, like everyone who has played with Pettersson this season. If you look at all NHL forwards, among the 350 of them that have played 500 minutes of 5-on-5 this season, Ilya Mikheyev ranks in the top 30 in scoring rate. It's like everyone who's played with Pettersson, you put someone on Pettersson's wing and they're going to produce, especially if they're a good player. Beauvillier is a good player. He's been a nice find, but the idea that he's a better player than Horvat or has been better since the trade is a fantasy, an absolute fact-free fantasy. The only way you could ever say something like that is if you haven't watched those two teams play much.
Yeah, I agree with you on Horvat, and the Barzal injury, not many people are taking into that account. Now, Thomas, something I didn't agree with you is Kuzmenko. You said trade him at the deadline, get a late first round.
No, stop. This up? How brave of you.
Hey,
How brave of you.
Hold it a second. I'm not going to bring it up on the night he ties Pavel Bure for rookie record goals, and I'm not going to bring it up. So anyways,
sorry, is he eligible? Is he a rookie? He's not really eligible for the Calder, Rick.
Is he a first-year player or a second-year player or a third-year player?
I mean, it looks to me like he's been a pro for like 6 years. He's 27.
So you're not going to take – I don't care if he was 77 years old, Thomas. He's got 34 goals.
I don't consider him an NHL rookie.
Okay, but he's a first-year player. You got to give me that.
Okay. No, okay. I will. That's fine. That's a good description.
So let me finish the question.
Why would I do that?
I think you've forgotten the question.
I forgot the question because you took me left, right, center. Listen, he's been great. He's been a great find. That's all I'm trying to say to you. That's it.
What's the question?
Well, the question is, he's been a great find. You were saying trade him at the deadline, Thomas.
I get a lot of heat for this take.
Yeah, justifiably.
But Personally, I think it's outrageous that anyone thought that the Arizona Coyotes should trade Travis Boyd for a draft pick. No, I mean, like, what are we talking about? It's part of the logic that I was spelling out was that Andrei Kuzmenko is really good, that he's going to help you win games down the stretch, that's not what this team should be trying to do. Like, that was part of what I was talking about, and we're seeing that play out. I have some regression concerns on Kuzmenko, but I've never said that he wasn't good. In fact, part of the logic of why I thought he should be traded was that I thought this team should try to sabotage their chances of getting a dead cat bounce down the stretch. This organization has no interest in that, right? They've played Thatcher Demko in 8 of 9. Yeah. They've played, even last night, Hughes over 28 minutes. JT Miller and Pettersson over 20 minutes again. They're playing every game down the stretch like it's game 7. And, one thing that I was sort of talking about beforehand, I was like, save percentage is likely to regress for this team. When that happens, they're going to play more low-scoring games. When that happens, the market's going to be told, we've turned this around. We're solid defensively now. All hail Talkit. It's exactly how it's played out. And, yeah, fans have really gravitated toward Kuzmenko, his bubbly personality. He does a ton of fun stuff on the ice, like the double toe drag goal that he scored against Ottawa in the opener. I'm not sure I've ever seen a move like that. So he's amazing. That's never the point. The point was never that he's not good. The point was that the deal didn't make sense for this team. And that's always been the case, right? Like, that's the same argument that I keep making. They extend JT Miller. I'm not saying JT Miller's not a great player. I'm saying that contract doesn't make sense for this team. They trade or they extend Kuzmenko. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm saying that doesn't make sense for this team. They trade for Hronek. Same thing. Nothing that happens down the stretch here is going to make those takes wrong, because the takes aren't about those players. The takes are about whether or not this team built this way can win. Mm-hmm. That's it. So if we're talking next season and the Canucks have won 2 playoff rounds, then come at me. But until then, the point wasn't that he's not good. The point was that this team probably can't win in the short term and should be prioritizing what really matters, upping their draft lottery odds, as opposed to selling hope off the back of a ton of meaningless wins. Come on.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. Rick might not be, but it's not about.
Oh, Rick just wanted to fire me up.
No, it's not about winning, Thomas. It's about winning the Stanley Cup. That's the way I feel, and I know you take a lot of criticism for that. By the way, just from a personal point of view, I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter. You get lambasted on Twitter. How do you deal with the criticism? You're good with that?
Not well. Yeah. No. Especially the last 2 weeks or the last week, I'd say I haven't dealt with it well at all. So it comes in cycles. Lots of times I enjoy it and revel in it. But the last week I've just been like, come on, man. Like, we're really going to make it a referendum every time Kuzmenko scores a goal on whether or not he should have been traded because they're winning games down the stretch of another lost season? Like, come on. I mean, I might be wrong about it. I'm wrong sometimes. People will be surprised to hear me say it, but I'm wrong sometimes. Wow. And I'll own it if I am. But I'm not wrong because Kuzmenko is scoring down the stretch. That was baked into the argument. The argument was always that he'd score down the stretch, and that's what you don't want. That was always part of it. Come on.
You going to say something, Rick?
Yeah, I was going to say, but the conversation you and I always have, they wouldn't have beat 26 teams out in August to get him if they would have told Milstein we're going to move him at the deadline. That, Thomas, is what I'm trying to get through to you.
That's another issue, though.
Yeah. You always have the excuses, though. Like,
well, hold it a second. They wouldn't have beat out 26 teams to get him if they told Milstein, no, by the way, you can pick Vancouver, but we're going to move him at the deadline. If they would have told him that, he wouldn't have come here in the first place.
But you can always manage things. Like, aren't managers paid to manage, Rick? Like, isn't part of being in the big chair, making the hard decisions, having the ability to go to an agent and being like, you've been more than what we wanted. You have been great for us. We're so glad to have had a chance to work with your client, but this hasn't gone the way we wanted it to. We have to consider this. What are like 4 or 5 situations that would work for you because we really want to maintain this relationship? Yeah. You're telling me that's not a possibility? You're telling me that millions of dollars worth of executive talent can't figure out how to solve that problem, Rick? Like, I just think that betrays a lack of imagination.
Well, I think
if it's as straightforward as that,
it would come under the category of a pleasant problem. We got to move on here. We just had one media superstar. We got McKeechee waiting. Thomas, happy St. Patrick's Day. Nice of you to join the club, not wearing green, and we appreciate that. Although we have green lighting, yes, it is early. I get that, but thanks so much, my friend. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me, boys.